Aleister Crowley, occultist, magician, poet, mountaineer. A figure who has fascinated and repelled in equal measure. This is the story of the man who would become known as the wickedest man in the world. Part 1. Birth and Early Years, 1875 to 1895. On October 12, 1875, Edward Alexander Crowley was born into a wealthy family in Royal Leamington Spa, Warwickshire. His father, Edward Crowley, was a preacher for a fundamentalist Christian sect known as the Plymouth Brethren. Young Aleister, as he preferred to be called, grew up in a strict religious household. Daily Bible readings were the norm, and the concept of sin loomed large in his childhood. Tragedy struck in 1887 when Crowley's father died of tongue cancer. This event would prove pivotal in shaping the young boy's worldview. Crowley later wrote, "With my father's death, my conventional attachment to the Christian religion ceased." Crowley attended several prestigious schools, including Malvern College and Tunbridge School. But he chafed against authority and religious orthodoxy. As a teenager, Crowley began to rebel. He smoked, visited prostitutes, and deliberately committed sins to test God's wrath. His mother's description of him as the Beast was a title he would later embrace with pride. Part 2. Cambridge and Spiritual Awakening, 1895 to 1898. In 1895, Crowley entered Trinity College, Cambridge. Here he pursued his passions for poetry and chess and honed his skills as a mountaineer. But it was also at Cambridge that Crowley had his first significant mystical experience. In December 1896, while in Stockholm, Crowley had a profound spiritual encounter that he believed opened his eyes to the existence of a spiritual world beyond the material. This experience led Crowley to devour occult literature. He read widely, from the works of alchemists to Eastern mystical texts. Part 3. The Golden Dawn and Magical Pursuits, 1898 to 1904. In 1898, Crowley was initiated into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a secret society devoted to the study and practice of the occult, metaphysics, and paranormal activities. It was here that Crowley began his formal magical training, studying under occultists like Alan Bennett and Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers. But Crowley's unconventional lifestyle and bisexuality made him a controversial figure within the order. Conflicts arose particularly with the poet W.B. Yeats, another member. Crowley's wealth allowed him to travel extensively. He climbed mountains in Mexico, studied Hinduism and Buddhism in India, and continued to write poetry prolifically. Part 4. The Book of the Law and Thelema, 1904-1914. In 1904, Crowley and his new wife, Rose Kelly, were in Cairo, Egypt. It was here that the event Crowley considered the most significant of his life occurred. Over 3 days in April, Crowley claimed to have received a text dictated by a supernatural entity named Iwas. This text became Liber al Vel Legis, or the Book of the Law, the central sacred text of Thelema, a new religious and philosophical system founded by Crowley. The central tenet of Thelema was, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will." Over the next decade, Crowley devoted himself to developing and promulgating Thelema. He wrote extensively, performed magical rituals, and continued to travel the world. Part V, The Great Beast, 666, 1915-1923. During World War I, Crowley found himself in New York. Here he wrote for pro-German magazines, a move that would later see him accused of treason. It was during this time that Crowley fully embraced his identity as the Great Beast 666, a title drawn from the Book of Revelation. In New York, Crowley also explored new avenues of expression, including painting and writing novels. In 1920, Crowley established the infamous Abbey of Thelema in Cefalù, Sicily. This was intended to be a commune where Thelemites could live according to their principles. Daily life at the abbey involved magical rituals, free love, and the use of drugs to attain mystical states. Crowley's writings from this period are among his most influential in occult circles, but scandal was never far away. In 1923, a British newspaper ran a series of sensationalist articles about life at the abbey. One headline proclaimed Crowley the wickedest man in the world, a moniker that would stick with him for the rest of his life. The negative publicity led to Crowley's expulsion from Sicily by Mussolini's fascist government. Part 6, Later Years and Legacy, 1923-1947. The next 2 decades saw Crowley wandering through Europe, continuing to write and teach, but increasingly dogged by poor health and financial troubles. During this period, he published some of his most important magical works, including Magic in Theory and Practice. During World War II, Crowley claimed to have helped the British war effort, suggesting he had invented the V for victory sign. However, these claims remain unverified. In his final years, Crowley lived in a boarding house in Hastings, England. Despite his reduced circumstances, he continued to correspond with followers and work on magical texts. On December 1, 1947, Aleister Crowley died at the age of 72. His last words were reportedly, "I am perplexed." Crowley's funeral was as controversial as his life. Newspapers described it as a black mass, though attendees denied this. Part 7, The Influence and Controversies. In the decades since his death, Crowley's influence has only grown. He appears on the cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. His ideas have influenced numerous occult orders, neo-pagan religions, and even aspects of the 1960s counterculture. Today, Crowley is the subject of serious academic study. Scholars analyze his role in the development of Western esotericism and his influence on modern culture. But Crowley remains a divisive figure. To his critics, he was a dangerous, moral provocateur. To his supporters, he was a liberated genius who pushed the boundaries of human experience. Crowley deliberately cultivated an image of himself as a dark magician, but he also claimed his ultimate goal was the enlightenment of humanity. His heavy drug use, which he viewed as a means of attaining mystical states, has been both criticized as reckless and defended as pioneering psychonautics. Crowley's literary output was enormous, ranging from obscure magical texts to poetry that received critical acclaim in his lifetime. Part 8, The Man Behind the Myth. So who was the real Aleister Crowley? A dark magician, a misunderstood genius, a charlatan? Perhaps he was all of these things and more. He was a skilled mountaineer who made several first ascents in the early days of alpinism. He was a chess player of near master strength. He was a painter whose works, while not considered masterpieces, show a unique vision. And he was a philosopher who grappled with fundamental questions of existence and human potential. Conclusion: Aleister Crowley was a complex figure who defies easy categorization. He pushed against the boundaries of conventional morality and spirituality, leaving a legacy that continues to fascinate and provoke. Whether seen as a prophet, a poet, or a provocateur, one thing is certain. Aleister Crowley left an indelible mark on the 20th century and beyond. His motto, "Do what thou wilt," continues to echo through the worlds of occultism, art, and popular culture. As we continue to grapple with questions of individual freedom, spiritual meaning, and the nature of reality, the life and work of Aleister Crowley remain as relevant and as controversial as ever.